another episode of Contagious Leadership Podcast. I don't even know what episode are we on today. I'm going to look at the screen. We're at episode 65, you guys. 65 shows strong. So excited to be bringing to you another amazing guest, Jason Mefford, who is going to be talking about the cost of sticking around in a job too long and why, if you're currently considering this, why you should be quitting. I'm going to get more into it, and we're going to have Jason really break this down for us in just a few seconds. Don't leave. Thanks for being here. We'll be right back in 30 seconds. Jason, welcome.
How do you like that round of applause, Jason?
I know. Well, it's great, right? Because a lot of times virtually, you don't get the applause. I'm sure people are out there always like, "Oh yeah, Jason, I love what you're saying," right?
That's
or
exactly
maybe
it.
they're not, but anyway.
No, they're there. Jason,
They're there.
That's my story.
They're absolutely there.
Jason, it is so exciting to have you on the show. And for those people who don't know Jason Mefford, he is a leadership coach. I'm actually going to let him introduce himself, but he has a podcast. He does some amazing things. He's got some amazing passions and music, which I'm sure that we will touch on as well. Jason, tell our audience a little bit about you.
Who the heck am I? I'm this crazy guy with a little beard on my chin, but no, I help. I have a podcast, Jamming with Jason, as well, where we have interviews with people, kind of like what we're doing here, as well as talk about music and different ways that people can improve their lives. But I also, one of the things that we're kind of talking about today is I'm a career coach, right? So you probably heard about life coaches, business coaches. What the heck is a career coach? Well, it's kind of what we're talking a little bit about today, is that a lot of times people don't realize, or they feel stuck in the career or the job that they're in. And, I help people kind of figure out how to get out of that and actually make a lot more money as well, and find and have a more fulfilled career as well. That's just one of the many hats. One of the reasons why I wear hats that I do. So.
Welcome.
So the reason why I wear hats is because I'm losing hair. That's why.
Well, I started, this is long for me. I decided long ago that I was just going to start shaving my head. I was not going to do the comb over, so I just started shaving my head and wearing a hat.
I feel you. Actually,
Jason, I don't think I've ever seen you without a hat on.
I know. Well, when I have pictures on social media, people are like, "Who is that guy? I don't recognize him. He doesn't have a hat on."
The team, I was like, I don't know if you got this, but we were like, Jason, do you have a different profile? I was like, I've met you in that picture. Like, I don't know, man, but no, it's funny. I actually, Lorianne, I don't know if I ever told you this, but this was when I was an industrial electrician. This was in 2001. And I'd actually lost a bet. I was on my way. We were going up to a job up in San Francisco. We were getting ready to start working on an oil refinery out there. And I lost a bet, and I had to shave my head. And my wife's like, wow, that actually doesn't look too bad. And I was like, yeah, I have a decent bald head. So we loved it. I kept it. And I had to clean everything anyways. I had to shave my beard and everything because it was an oil refinery. So you have to be fitted with tanks and different types of safety equipment. And so you can't have any facial hair. So anyways, went with that for a while. Loved it. 15 or 20 years later, I'm like, you know what? I think I want my hair back. So I started growing my hair because my hair will grow. And I'm sitting on the couch and my wife comes up to the back of me and goes, oh, you're thinning. I jumped up, walked right into the bathroom, just started bicking it right back down again. I was like, nope, not doing this. So people go, can you grow hair? Yes. but it is thinning.
Do you want to? No.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Hey, listen, I'm seeing somebody drop stuff in the comments, so thank you very much. If you are watching live, don't forget, we want to know, drop a hashtag live. If you are watching on a replay, drop a hashtag replay. But here's the thing. We want you to drop in questions for our guests. We want to know that you're watching, and we're about to get into a really good conversation. So, Jason, one of the things that we both agree on, and this is why I was extremely interested to have you on the program, is that there is a cost, an actual physical money trackable cost for not moving within organizations or out of organizations, right? There is a real cost. Let's get right into this. This is going to be a controversial topic anyways, right? So let's just
well, for the
it.
corporations, maybe not for the people that are watching. Like, hell yeah,
And that was one of the things I was wondering about too. And I thought, you know what? And I just posted it about a half an hour ago before we got into this. Look, if you're in an HR team, if you're in a management team, you want to listen to this. Yeah. Because this is how you can be proactive in understanding how to build the right culture, or at least the structure of how to do right for your employees internally that could make you a more attractive and a more successful organization. But most importantly, it's about education. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Jason. Let's go, man. Let's get right into it.
Yeah. So I for a long time, I've always known just kind of intuitively that there was a huge cost. I would throw numbers out there like $2 to $3 million over your career. And finally somebody on my team was like, come on, Jason, really? Is it really $2 million? So I just did a little spreadsheet, right? And I took, kind of from my background, how the career that I kind of grew up in, I took kind of the basics of, okay, if you start, your first job out of college, then, a couple of years later, you typically would be promoted. And then 3 to 4 years later, you get another promotion, right? So I kind of went along the normal promotion route. And I just started with a local salary here in Los Angeles where I lived, right? So as if somebody were to start out of college today, and what it would be based on kind of a normal cost of living increase that you would normally get in your job, versus if you were to actually make those promotion milestones at the particular time and point in time at which you should do that. And I ran it under like 3 different scenarios, and sure enough, the difference was in total lifetime earnings was between $2 to $3 million. And so that's why, for everybody that's listening, you might be sitting there thinking, but, I'm supposed to be a loyal employee. I get it. Your companies are telling you to be a loyal employee, keep your head down, do good work. But the reality is you're leaving a lot of money on the table. I mean, imagine what an extra $2 to $3 million over your lifetime would do for your family, for your cost of living. And I think especially now, Rigo, as we were talking before, with inflation this year in 2022, the average cost of living increase means it's going to take you 2 to 3 years at least just to get back to where you were from a real, cost of living standpoint than it was at the beginning of the year. Because I'm telling you, corporations aren't going to go give you a 10 or 15% raise to make up for inflation. You might be lucky to get 5. You're still 2 to 3 years behind where you need to be.
Now that's assuming that every year everything just stops.
And there's a lot of companies that do like freezes
yeah.
on salaries for years. Or you could be at the top of your pay scale and they're like, hey, Lorianne, we love you, but we're already paying you the maximum we can, so you don't get a raise.
So listen, I've heard this one recently. I heard this myself, right? In a previous role, I had negotiated well, got myself in, and we come around to the 1 year mark, and then all of a sudden, well, I know we talked about an increase, but we're going to do it this way. We'll give you a bonus instead. I'm like, look, if I was 20, you'd have fooled me, right? I understand how this is going to work. I'm not a dummy. Like, no, you owed me a 10% increase. That was the deal. I did my part. They kind of floated around, and I was like, all right, that's strike one, right? And I already kind of knew, okay, this is where we're going. Well, you're one of the more, you're in our top hired brackets. And I'm like, my negotiation skills to position myself to grow your business well is not a penalty, and I shouldn't be penalized by that because someone else is happy being underpaid. Because in this role, this is a lower scale than it should be. If I want to move to a different area or different city, like, well, the cost of living's higher. You're right. And almost every one of those companies will allow me to do this remotely. Mm-hmm. So I can choose.
And another company probably, you know, if you were to move to another company at that point, you probably would have gotten a 10 or 15% increase anyway.
Every time. I did it every time, Jason. I would not stick with a company longer than a few years. My rule was 2 years. Now, if they gave me opportunity to grow internally, I would stay and continue to grow because I love that challenge. But I gave a company 2 years. Even if I didn't like what was happening in the first year, I always felt that sometimes that first year could be, it could go really well, and then you'll really know what they're like by the second year. Or it could be, you know, it could not go that well, and you could work hard to bring it to where you want to by the second year. So there's very few in my entire career, very, very few companies that I stayed with less than 24 months. But typically, every time I did that, I would negotiate 10, 15% increases. And so doing that over a course of 10 years, I was able to really elevate my income very fast.
This is making me queasy already.
Why? Lorianne,
okay.
Why? Break us down. Because I know your history is different, right?
Yeah. So first of all, I do come from healthcare. And so just like Jason and I were talking before the show, I mean, that's already a lower pay scale because it's a nonprofit. But also, what did I miss out on working for healthcare versus, you know, even staying in healthcare, like medical device, a profit company? Like what would the difference have been? I'm sure, like, just like what you're talking about, like this $2 to $3 million difference, I'm sure that would have happened. But one of the funny things that we're talking about, like Regal, how you said that you have let a 2 year and then you would move on. I was kind of like that also. I spent a couple of years in one department. I passed the boards. I moved to another department. My father, I remember, because I took a pay cut for that second shift, so I could take and pass those boards. I remember my father saying, "Why would you take a pay cut? And why would you keep changing jobs?" Because he did not understand what I was doing. But I somehow intuitively
he wasn't wrong, right?
He wasn't wrong. But I knew that my credentials, sure, I took like at the time it was a 50-cent, you know, pay cut. And to me, like, that wasn't big enough for me to say no, because I knew if I had those letters after my name and I needed the experience to pass the boards, that was going to help me out in the long run. And it did. I became very desirable because of my unique credentials. But again, it's healthcare. And I didn't know, like, when I shifted from one hospital to another, just like you're talking, Jason, like you just get paid for your experience in healthcare, not what you bring to the table.
You know, I'd like to drop something here, and then Jason, I'd love your feedback on this. But funny enough, Lorianne, in healthcare, I found healthcare has the same ability as most industrial type of work because there's so much travel opportunity, and most people are contracted or they move around from hospital to hospital. They're typically working for doctors that are under certain groups, right? You rarely work for the hospital, right? You normally work for groups, and then you would work maybe at this hospital or that office. And so what I found, at least in my experience, especially now that, you know, being in marketing and sales today, as I look to find other industries that are similar to the experience I have to see, hey, can I help that industry as well? In that research and talking to friends and family that have that experience, I'm realizing, oh, wow, you can negotiate your own contracts as well. I just don't think people are properly trained. And see, that's the thing, is that, you know, if you think about this, let's go back to education, teaching kids in school, right? You know, I was years into running a business. The first time I was 25 years old, 26 when it started failing. And I realized I didn't know how to balance a checkbook, right? I mean, that was the reality. Like, I could sell, everything was great. Economy 2006 started tanking. And then I was like, where's my money? Then I realized I don't even know how to balance a check. I don't understand what a P&L means. And
Yeah.
so if you think about this, like, we're so poorly educated in our education system in preparation for life. You want to talk about, understanding how to gain yourself in employment. Like, okay, you have a 2% or 3% raise every year. Great. GDP is worse than that. And the annual increase in cost of living, I'm literally going down. Donnie and I did some research on this, but you're literally losing money annually because your dollar value is dropping. And organizations are like, oh, we're going to give you an annual, and you have to do well in your annual reviews in order to get that 3%. And I'm thinking, so let's just say I'm a B student, and that's a good, decent student. I'm getting a 3.5 or a 3.2, right? I'm doing well. I'm not super exceptional, but I'm doing well. That means that every year I'm making less and less money. Jason?
Well, yeah, and that's totally what it is, and that's why people can't realize, or they're sitting here wondering, and some of the people watching this are probably having this kind of discussion, right? It's like, how come, I can't make ends meet? Well, part of the reason for that is you might have been in the job too long, and so even though you're making 50,000, 100,000, and you think that's a lot in your mind, it was 5 years ago, but now, it takes 120,000 to be the same as it was at 100. And chances are you didn't get there, right? Internally. And kind of to Lorianne's point before, especially our generation, right? We were taught, go to college, get a degree, get a good paying job with a corporation, you stay there your whole career, right? One of my uncles worked for the same electric utility for 45 years, right? He started, or 47 years. He started when he was 18. He retired when he was 65. That was the way things were done, right? There was stability. You always had your paycheck coming in. He had a pension.
Yep.
And so it worked great for him. But in those days when you had a pension, now that's not an option, right? Because companies realized how much money they were paying. They're like, screw that.
Oh my God.
No pensions.
You're
no
about to
pensions.
Open a whole nother can.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we can't. We probably can't go down there today.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But to Lorianne's point too, right? It's like, and this is where kind of career coaching comes in to help, because sometimes your best answer is not what you've been taught. It's not what you believe is the right thing, but it might be the right thing for you. Right. So in that situation, okay, well, I'm taking a 50 cent an hour pay cut. So that's what, $1,000 a year. It was probably a lot at the time, but you realize by doing that, you're going to be able to get those credentials behind your name. And so taking $1,000, pay cut effectively 1 year could mean that you could catapult into your next job and maybe earn 10,000 a year more once you have those credentials. Right. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't think about, that I'm big on, is strategy. What is it going to take you? Yeah. What's the strategy? What is it going to take you to get to that next part of your life? Right. Or let's say, maybe somebody has kids. This happens all the time, right? Middle age. Hey, I've my last kid. I was just talking with a friend about this week. He's got a year until they're empty nesters. So he's like, okay, well, let's talk about what are you going to do this year? Because a year from now, you want your life to be different. What do you need to be doing now so that you're ready for when your last kid leaves the house? And now you have the flexibility, right? But again, a lot of people, they don't think about this, and they don't realize how much they're leaving on the table, because the corporations, and I understand why, right? They're trying to make you feel loyal to them. They're using terms like quiet quitting. That is a bullshit term. That is a bullshit term.
I love it. I love it. Somebody calling that out. Thank you.
I'm calling it out because quiet quitting is corporations trying to make you feel guilty for not killing yourself at work.
Yeah, they're trying to demonize. They're trying to
demonize you.
Yep.
And here's the reality, right? Is we always end up making up for it. So what ends up happening is, I'm just going to run through like a hypothetical. Is we know inflation went up, right? We'll just say 10%. right? And you're getting a 3% raise, or we'll say 5% to keep the numbers round, right? So effectively, you are getting paid 5% less now than you did at the beginning of the year. Okay. So most people would say, well, hey, if I'm getting paid 5% less, shouldn't I do 5% less work, right? Or 10% less work? And so what happens is somebody who is maybe killing themselves working 50, 60 hours a week, they go from 50 hours a week to 45 hours a week, right? I'm going to reduce my input by 10%. So I'm still kind of feeling whole, if you will, on the hours that I'm working. They're still working more than 40 hours a week, right? But your corporation is going to say, hey, Rigo, how come you're only working 45 hours a week now instead of 50? You lazy bastard, right? And it's like, no, I'm just trying to make myself whole, right? Or maybe I have to go get a part-time job now to make up for your cheap ass that won't pay me what I deserve in my regular day-to-day job, right? And that's happening a lot. We're seeing a lot of people with 2 and 3 jobs. And that used to be the case, but it always was the people that were, the blue collar workers, the factory workers, the people like that. Now it's not. It's white collarish type people who are, being an Uber driver or delivering DoorDash on their time off, just trying to make ends meet, right? That's not the American dream. It's not the American dream I was taught, that I was fed. And that's why part of me is like, that American dream that you've been given of go to college, work really hard, stay in the same job, and be loyal to your company. That's not the American dream. That's American slavery, folks, in the current age.
Do you think this has does this come down to corporate theology, or is this really coming maybe even deeper? Are we missing the mark in educating our children properly in order to position them for career growth, right? Because a company will only be able to have the power that the employees allow them to have. I mean, that's the one thing about having a business is I can only do so much. If I mistreat my team constantly, if I don't give them opportunities to grow or be a part of growth with me, or give them opportunity in any of the areas they're looking for, I will eventually lose them. And there's nothing I can do to force anything on them, right? I could try, but I'm just going to hurt myself. They give me the power. It's up to them how much power I have. Do you agree with that statement?
For smaller businesses, probably yes. For the larger corporations, here's again another little thing that you don't get told. But the way that, especially here in the US, right, most people's healthcare, as an example, is tied with their current employer. And it's very, very expensive to get health insurance. I mean, it's like $2,000 a month, right? For my wife and I. That's a lot of money, right? And so most people don't have that on their own. And so they rely on having something like health insurance from their employer. And so what's happened over time is the corporations, they know that, right? They want to get you with their claws. And I understand, don't get me wrong. I'm a capitalist, right? I own businesses, but they usually, they come in and they grab you and they make you so sticky and so scared to leave because, oh my gosh, if I leave my job, I lose my health insurance. Now, one of my friends that I know, he wants to be an entrepreneur. He wants to do it on his own. He has a child with autism who requires a significant amount of health care each month. I want to say it was like $4,000 or $5,000 a month that they were outlaying to help their child. So he tried to be an entrepreneur for a little while, but had to go back and take a corporate job because he couldn't afford the health care, right? So that's one of the ways that they have their claws in you. And it's really, for a lot of the bigger corporations, the power has been in the corporation's hands. Now, what we're seeing is people are saying, screw that, right? And employees are starting to try to take back that power. Now, the reality is for a lot of people, it's difficult to do that, right? Because like I said, if you're in some of those situations, you have a spouse with issues, right? A lot of times people aren't willing to leave because of those hooks that are
You know,
tied in. Or, oh my gosh, what
yeah.
if I do have to go what if I decide to quit and I have to go 3 to 6 months, right, without health insurance, without pay? Can I do that? And this is where, kind of back to your point, Rigo, part of it is us as parents not educating our children. And it's not that we're bad. It's just we don't know any different. We were taught something different, right? And so having 3 to 6 months of cash in the bank is a good thing. It gives you a lot of freedom, right? But a lot of people don't have that because, again, they're working so hard just to try to make ends meet every month that they've given their power to their employers. And so one of my big messages is take control of your career. As much as your company or whoever you're working for tells you, oh, I've got you covered, I'm taking care of you. Again, I'm going to call bullshit, right? Because it's not. And if you're not proactive, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not doing things proactively to take control of your career, then you're just still a corporate slave. I mean, and the great philosopher John Lennon, go back and listen to Working Class Hero, right? And you're still fucking peasants as far as I can see.
You know what's interesting?
Listen to that song. That song was written a long time ago, but it totally reflects what's going on.
Well, you're not wrong. Listen, this behavior has been going on since the Industrial Revolution. Mm-hmm. If you look at our education system, this is where I think it all keeps coming down to, because, you know, when you look at how the education system was created and then indoctrinated into this country, we were pulling all of this from other places. And I'm not going to get into the details on this call, but if you really go back and learn and realize where it's coming from, you would be quite bothered to understand where the foundation of our education was coming from and why. We needed workers, and we needed workers to stick around. A couple of years back, I decided to explore some other areas of business as an entrepreneur, and got myself licensed in life insurance and health, and started digging in and realizing just how much financial education was missing just in general, of understanding how to create this lifetime income, understanding how to properly protect yourself. A week after I quit and decided I was going to be an entrepreneur in February of 2018 and start this company, my wife told me she was pregnant with baby number 6. So I was like, okie dokie, here we go, right? And so here's one of the things that I realized most people would immediately move into. I'm in trouble. I need to go back. I'm just going to go get a different job. And trust me, getting a job for me is not difficult in my line of work and what I do. That wasn't the issue. And it's a false sense of security. I believe people believe that they are secure working for an organization versus taking it in their own hands. And you made some comments about taking charge of your career. I don't think that means you have to quit or leave. No. It means you need to be strategic in understanding, where is this supposed to go? Here's what I'm going to do. And if I do my part, then you, the employer, have to do this. And if you don't honor your word, I'm out. Right?
Yeah. And because, again, I mean, obviously the title of this was to be controversial, to get people to listen, right?
I wanted people to listen.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But I'm not advocating people to go quit their job right now.
Yeah.
Right. But like you said, there is this false sense of security that the company you're working for is going to take care of you. And the reality is, you could be 3 to 6 months without pay, because they choose to terminate you, right?
And we were.
So there is no safety.
And we were, right? And here's what we did. And we learned this lesson, Jason. So I'm going to share with you what we did. And then I really want your feedback on this. We immediately took our cash and then we paid off any debts that were going to hold us on a monthly reoccurring debt, like just paid them off. So we took our savings, we did that, and then we decided, okay, we're going to start the company. Now, at the same time, my best friend passed. My wife was pregnant. We decided to leave northern Minnesota, and our house out there, you have like 2-3 months maybe of a sales market. And after that, you're done, because it's like 7-8 months of winter. You don't sell houses in the winter. That house sold. And we moved to Kansas because we decided this was a neutral area that was affordable. It was in the middle of the country. It'd be easy for me to travel. There was strategy. I could get in a car and go to almost any major city in less than 8 hours. I could get on a plane and have direct flights, inexpensive, within a few hours. Most of my potential prospects come through Kansas. So I have opportunity to meet without ever spending a dime because they're already traveling. It's inexpensive for them to come visit me. We started looking at the different options. We thought Iowa, Kansas, Oklahoma. We decided Kansas was the right spot. I realized most people aren't willing to move. Most people think that they have to be in this one place to create security for their family. The other thing is we started going out and shopping. $17,000 is what it was going to cost to have a baby. I was like, that's ridiculous. I started going out and negotiating with cash. That 17 turned into 9 just by saying I'm cash. Then you started shopping even more. By the time we were done, we found a birthing center and a midwife. It cost me $2,500.
Good for you.
That was less than I would have paid. It was less than I would have paid with insurance. I've actually spent
and your deductible.
And my deductible. I have spent thousands. I delivered one of my children because the doctor didn't believe me that my wife was going into labor. Literally delivered my baby in the hospital, and I still got a $13,000 bill. Because they decided that she needed to have 2 doctors. So I had to pay that, and none of them showed up. Me and the nurse did it. I was like, she's having a baby. Get ready.
Well, and you bring up, because that's one of the things too, is that, and maybe it's a little bit different now because of the post-COVID and, more working remotely. But I mean, the reality is, if you can decide, if you want to play the safe route and you get a job and you work for the same company for 20 years, that's fine. Right. If you want to stay in the same place. I mean, one of the people that I know, she's in a small town in the South. She didn't want to leave. So she's worked for the same company for 45 years. That's okay. That was her choice. Right. To her, that geographic proximity was more important. And sometimes it is, if you have family members who are ill or aging parents or other things like that, but it's more about being strategic. And the reality is, if it's more important for you to earn more money, then you're going to have to make some of those sacrifices. You're going to have to get creative. You're going to probably have to move. You're going to obviously have to move, jobs within a company or to another company.
Yep.
You're probably going to have to invest in yourself, right? And again, I mean, so like for me in my career, there was a point when I decided I needed to get an MBA. So I spent $100,000 getting an MBA, right? Because that was what I felt like I needed for me to be able to move forward in my career. I took the time, I spent the money, right? There's probably some things like that. And that's where, again, you might not be able to see what it is that you need. That's why it's always helpful to have a coach or somebody else that you're talking to, right? To be able to help you understand and see that. But what's interesting to me, and this is the oxymoronic, and I emphasis on moronic, that people aren't willing usually to spend, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 on themselves, realizing that's going to have $500,000 or $1 million worth of future income potential. Because realistically, investments in yourself that lead to higher earnings over your career have a much better return than any financial investment that you can invest in.
God.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
so,
that $100,000 I put in my
right
MBA, that was $300,000 or $400,000 of career additional compensation. Right. So
and it's not always going to be the case.
It's not always going to be the case, but like I said, what ends up happening is most people are not even willing to do that.
What's that, Lorianne?
I said it can also be like a $15 book. I've actually, like my first book, Rethink Leadership, 4 Lessons to Make You Remarkable. I had people read that book, apply the lessons, and then shoot me an email saying, I did exactly what your book said. I not only got promoted, but I got a huge raise.
Yeah.
But again, so it doesn't have to be the MBA, but it is about
investing in yourself.
Yeah, they invested in themselves and they took the action. They applied what was in the book instead of expecting osmosis to kick in.
That isn't going to work.
Yeah, that's
please. Wishing, hoping, and praying
Yeah,
doesn't
you
help.
can put as many positive words on your mirror as you want about getting a raise, but you got to put things in action. And I love how you said grabbing a coach, either a career coach or moving forward or growing yourself. It was that I know for a fact when somebody asked me today, what's your biggest advice, is that invest in yourself. Like seriously, it is the number one thing that catapulted me into where I needed to be. And in the first couple years, I thought maybe it was a bad move because everything started going the opposite direction. But what I realized is that I was having to challenge myself. All this growth and personal growth and all the coaching and all the understanding started shaking things up. And I realized I was doing all the wrong things. So I had to reverse course and then get back on the right course. And I remember talking to one of my executives at that point, and I said, you realize everything's going to change, right? No, it won't. I said, yes, it will. Because I've been doing 3 to 4 jobs for the last couple of years, and I've been okay with it. I'm now going to only do the job I was hired for because I've already neglected myself, my body, my family, my spiritual walk. Everything has been neglected because I've been doing so much here. It's all going to go a completely different way. Within the next year, we had so many problems I had to leave the organization. Because now it's exactly what you said earlier. Why aren't you doing this? And what about this? And what about that? And I'm like, none of these were part of my job. They just weren't getting done. And so I stepped up and took care of them.
Well, and kind of to that point that you brought.
What was that, Lorianne?
I said, good for you for having the courage to actually speak up. Because I think that there's, and Jason, would you agree with this, that a lot of people don't speak up and say,
I have a problem speaking up.
Work for me anymore.
Yeah, I'm a quiet person. I'm a quiet soul.
Yeah.
I have a real hard time speaking my mind. So thank you, Lorianne, for that. Because that was a real issue for me. No, I probably could have kept a little bit down, to be honest. But you're right. But go ahead and finish, please.
Well, I was going to say, because you bring up a good point too, because, a lot of times we expect immediate results. It's not going to be immediate results, right? I mean, that's why typically if somebody goes into coaching, let's say, right, it's like, look, you got to do coaching for at least 3 months. Why? Because a lot of the things that are going to change, you're not going to see those results for 90 to 180 days, right? So you've got to be willing to put in that time. But like you said, after a year, you're going to turn around and go, holy shit, I'm a lot different now, right? Or, kind of to your point, if things were totally different after a year, right, of actually doing the work, because sometimes we have to relearn things. And I think one of those things too is speaking up, right? If you're not happy, we have to say something, right? And I was the same way as you, Rigo. I mean, I kept getting, I was always that guy that was raising my hand. We should do this, and they're like, yes, we should. And Jason, you should do that. But they weren't paying me commensurate for it. I mean, I had three or four different, executive level hats that I was wearing, but I was getting paid for one job, right? And it's like, at some point something's got to give at that, right?
I love that. That's so, Jason. I mean, let's give our audience a little bit of career coaching, so that, so that they get a taste of what it would be like to work with you. But what can somebody do? What are the top, maybe 3 ideas or tips that you have that somebody could start working on themselves, investing in themselves, so that they could actually move their career and not be so stagnant, and maybe even, find a new company or organization to work for, or even move within the company?
Yeah, so there's probably some questions that you should just start asking yourself in general, right? Like one of the first ones is, how long have you been in your career? Or how long have you been in the current job? And I typically tell people, I mean, again, on the aggressive side, maybe 2 years, but if you've been in the same job for 3 to 5 years, is it time to move on? Start asking yourself the question, asking yourself questions like, do I actually enjoy what I'm doing? Right? Because I think a lot of times if you're serious with yourself, a lot of times the answer is no. Right? And, what are some other things that I could do that would make me happier? Right? Because because that's the other side effect of this is if you feel like you're trapped in a job, you're not happy at work, that carries over into every other part of your life as well. So you're not a happy partner, you're not a happy parent, you're not a, whatever, along the way. So you can start asking yourself some of that, right? Okay, what would my next dream job be, right? So again, if you're in a career that kind of has a normal progression, maybe you're a manager and you want to get to the director level. Well, what are the requirements to become a director at some of these other places? Sometimes it might just be years of experience. Sometimes there might be, credentials, certifications, other stuff like that, um, you know, that you need to do to get to the next level, right? So maybe what's holding you back is that lack of investment in yourself, right? Asking yourself, some questions too about your personal life, right? What do you value more? Do you value time off more than money, or is money more important than time off? Right? How much are you traveling? How much do you want to travel? Are you traveling to the places that you want to? And I'm meaning from a work perspective, right? What's your family situation? Like we talked before about the empty nester and, having kids at home or aging parents. Do you need to be in a physical proximity with them or not? And is it more important to do that and maybe take less money right now for that short term, right? Start looking at your personal finances, because again, I can't remember the rate, but it's somewhere between 75 and 80% of people in the US are living paycheck to paycheck. So how much do you have in savings? Do you have 3 to 6 months of savings in cash? Because the reality is at some point you're going to need that. And that's why every financial advisor will tell you, start with at least 3 months of cash. So how much do you spend each month? Multiply it by 3, make sure that that's sitting in a savings account somewhere. Just that by itself will take so much pressure off of you of trying to make ends meet every month. Just knowing that money is sitting there is huge from a psychological perspective.
Murphy's Law, right?
Yeah. But
Murphy's Law.
What I'm also,
go ahead, Lori.
What I'm also hearing you say, Jason, is that, there's so much more to consider, about your life as a whole, and not just this little part of your life, which is your job, your career. I mean, really think about like how your career actually fits in with your life and how you want it to fit in with your life or your new life. One of the things that I remember like hearing with people, because early on in like my career coaching, not my career coaching, but just like in my coaching career, I mean, I started off more as a life coach, but I remember just like telling people like, why don't you just like go out and investigate? Because so many people say like, oh, I can't. Well, just go out and just see what's out there. Like not only what you would like to do, but what opportunities are even available to you, because you might, because sometimes I feel like we think like the grass is always greener, in the other yard, and sometimes just that, I think just being empowered by looking actually made people feel like I actually have a choice. I feel like I have a choice. I feel more empowered. I choose to stay here right now, and I choose to take this path. Do you find that with your clients as well?
Yeah, and that's why I always do what I call customized training or customized coaching, right? Because again, I might have two people they're in the same industry, they're at the same point in their career, but how I would coach them would be different, right? Because like you said, there's a lot of these other things behind it on what really is most important to you. Some people, they do the fact that the stability of having a paycheck every 2 weeks, being able to leave work. Well, in fact, here's a real life story, right? So I was at our local Lowe's home improvement store a little while ago, and I was looking to buy a new barbecue, right? So I was talking to the guy who was working in that section about some of the different options and which one I was going to pick. And as we got talking, he shared a little bit more about himself. This is a guy who he was a director level HR person at a very large company here in Southern California. And he told me that he just could not take it anymore. He could not take the pressure anymore and just had to do something different to where he could leave work at work. He just had to show up for his shift, go home, not have to deal with all of the other crazy stuff. And so he quit, a high paying corporate job to go to work on the sales floor for Lowe's. And again, I don't know what the difference was, but I'm guessing he probably took at least a 50%, if not bigger, pay cut. But he told me, he said, I am so much more at peace. I am so much happier now earning a lot less money, because right now at this point in my life, right, I just need to detach a little bit and not have my work and my career rule my life, right? And so for him, that was the right choice. Now again, how long is he going to work there? I don't know. I think this conversation was about a year ago, and I noticed he was still there. I think last time that I went in, I saw him, but at some point he's probably going to decide, okay, now it's time for me to move on and do something different, right? And so that's why each person is different. And so again, if any of you that are watching this are thinking, well, okay, I'm going to reach out to a coach or do something, just ask a few questions, because most coaches try to just run people through the same thing and they just tell everybody the same thing. So make sure whoever you're getting advice from actually understands you as a person and is asking you some of those questions about your values and your stage of life and where you want to be. And also that it's not always until the end, right? I can't remember, one of the financial service firms has their ads now about, grandma kind of comes to live with them. And so they took some money out to redo the kitchen because grandma loves to cook. And that was what was important, right? And the whole idea of, it's not save up all your money until you get to be 70 and then spend it in retirement, but you've got to be strategic in doing what's most important for you at whatever stage of life you happen to be in.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So okay. So when does somebody need to, like, what are a couple good red flags? Time to go.
Good question.
Time to go. If you wake up, or if you go to bed Sunday evening or wake up Monday morning and you're dreading going to work, a lot of people will actually get sick on Sunday or wake up Monday morning. Monday is actually one of the highest absentee days.
It's not from hangovers?
No. Well, if you're younger, it might be, yeah, but a lot of heart attacks, a lot of other stress. So
heart attacks happen on Monday.
If you're feeling, if you're feeling those kinds of things on Sunday or Monday, then maybe something isn't right. Your body's trying to tell you something, right?
Yeah.
If you feel tired all the time, right? If you just feel exhausted all the time, and if you're working, 50, 60 hours a week, why? Now, sometimes that's because of the person, right? Sometimes it's not necessarily an expectation. So is it something that you're doing, or is it something that's being required of your company, right? Who knows, right? I mean, you'd have to kind of ask those questions and dig into it. That's a big one. Are you being lied to? And so what I say, Rigo kind of mentioned before, he'd give companies 2 years. And this is one that ends up happening a lot of times, is because I'll sometimes work with people who are kind of getting ready to move up to the next level, right? So they're like the deputy, and their executive is supposed to leave within the next year or whatever, and I'm going to take over, right? Okay,
they're supposed
blah, blah. They're supposed to.
Yeah, I never see that work out, by the way.
Or you get promised something, like you got promised your 10% raise after the end of the year. Well, if your company lies to you the first time, or they string you along, or they promise you something and then they're like, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that, right?
Yep.
See that as a red flag, right? And again, I mean, I had that in my career. I specifically, this company that I was going to work for, they'd had a hard time. They wanted to make sure that they retained whoever came in. So I said, okay, I'll do a 3-year deal. Right. And so we negotiated my compensation, this deal for the 3 years. And as long as I accomplished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the things were, right, that I would get this retention bonus at the end of 3 years. So I went in, kicked butt my first year, accomplished everything on the list in the first year. Okay. So now it was just pretty much biding out my time. And I remember getting to the point where it was almost time for them to pay it out. So I asked my boss, I'm like, I think I've done everything. I'm just checking in to make sure. And I remember her coming back and kind of doing one of these, well, I don't know, blah, 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 blah kind of thing. Right. Red flag to me. Now, the CFO, when she heard about it, she's like, no, of course you got to pay him. Right. But because I heard that from my boss, that red flag went up. And I was like, okay, I'm getting called by recruiters already.
Yep.
And I've been telling them no, but now I know that I'm getting that retention bonus. And now I'm listening, and I started interviewing because I knew that I wasn't going to be there very long. Yep. If she wasn't going to be true to her word, or was going to give me kind of grief about it after I'd done everything I was supposed to do, that's a red flag that, okay, it's time for me to start looking for something else. So I started interviewing and traveling all over the country and found a different position.
Good for you. Good for you. Because a lot of people would make that, well, again, coming up with that loyalty for the company. Well, I'm sure like there's a reason, and I should be thankful that I have this job, and I'm sure they meant well. When it's Listen, bullshit.
Yeah, I'm all about loyalty. Lorianne, you nailed it. It is
if
bullshit.
They lie about this little thing, what else are they lying about?
That's exactly right. And I'm all about loyalty. Listen, as an entrepreneur, I worked like an entrepreneur. I was very entrepreneurial in the companies that I worked for. This is not my first business. This is my 4th, technically my 5th in my lifetime. So like I've gone through this. This isn't the first time. I was always giving that kind of that kick in, Lorianne, always trying to build something better and invest in it like it was mine. It's not always received, but that was some of the learning I had to learn too, which was I need to have skin in the game if I'm going to give that much of my own pound of flesh, right? Yeah. You know, there needs to be a return back from an employer. You are not unloyal by not giving more than. But if you are being asked to give more and the company's willing to give you back skin in the game for that investment, I think that's a different scenario. But when they don't match up to that promise, you're right. I always, like I said, it was 2 years, but I also gave them 3 strikes, sometimes 2. But it was kind of a couple strike rule. But I always felt that if you don't like something, say it. Like, don't assume, because what I have found is that so many managers are so poorly equipped and trained to be in a management role that they don't know how to tell you something went wrong. And so you assume they just don't appreciate you. When in fact, they're trying to figure out how to keep you, but they're firing 2 other people in order to do it, but they never told you that. Mm-hmm. Right? So, you know, I've just learned that if you're an employee, like, go say something, but know that you should have probably a backup, because not everybody likes that. And sometimes they are just trying to screw you, and then they'll just, there it is. There's, bye-bye. See you later, Mr. Murillo.
Well, look, and I know for me, especially because, like I said, it's somebody on my team asked me to go back and do that calculation. Is 2 million really the number? I've been extremely blessed in my career, and for whatever, dumb luck, call it whatever, that I just kind of knew to do some of these things along the way. And again, the numbers don't necessarily make sense because of how old it was, but you know, the job that I got out of college to where I ended up about 15 years later when I left the corporate world, I had increased my compensation by 15 times, 15 times what I started with out of college, right? And so I find myself very lucky that was my experience. But a lot of these things that I'm teaching people and I'm sharing with you here are exactly the things that I did. I just didn't know.
You were able to put a name to it later.
Yeah. And now it's like, oh man,
Like, oh, yeah.
This is why this happened. And so, yeah, it's that, the reality is most of the time, if you want to grow your career quicker to an executive levels, multi six figure compensation, you're going to have to invest in yourself. You're going to have to change jobs. You're going to have difficult conversations with the person you work with. If you don't feel like you're being adequately compensated, you got to say something or you got to move on. You've got to be willing to sometimes, move geographic locations,
Yes.
move companies, learn new corporations,
New
all
sets,
new
everything.
skill sets, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Because honestly, there's a lot of jobs that are going away because the computers are doing it. So,
Yep.
that's another thing that I'm big on with a lot of the people that I work with is these soft skills, Rigo, that you mentioned that most managers don't have.
Yep.
That is the only thing that is going to get you through
I
in the
agree.
future.
I agree.
And so if you don't have those, if you're not learning them, if you're not developing them, then computers can take your job.
Yep. And Lorianne made a comment about she was doing things in order to grow herself, to get those letters. Education today, that's different. Your education,
different.
those 4 years could be working for companies around the United States. Those 4, 6, 8 years could be the investment that you want to make. I talk to my employees about that now is what do you want to be in 10 years and 5 years? What kind of money and where do you want to be at? And then understand what are you willing to invest to get there? Don't think you're going to get there tomorrow, but that's exactly it. And then look at education differently today. It's not just about college, right? It's about learning what you need to do from companies. If I hadn't learned, I'll say this and all the negative, every company I work for gave me the platform that I'm here today on. I couldn't be here without learning what I needed to. But once I couldn't learn anymore, and once I knew I was no longer going to be appreciated, not because my poor little feelings were hurt, but I couldn't grow internally, I knew it was time to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and like you said, the traditional brick and mortar university education that we've all been taught for so long, that's not a lot of times the skill sets or the things that you need to have. Yeah. Specialized certifications, specialized training, specific experiences, other things like that are more important now.
And those soft skills.
And the soft skills.
Lorianne, I'm going to give you the opportunity here to have final word. I got excited on this one. Sorry, I kind of took over a little bit. But before we get into that, listen, you guys, if you haven't already started following us, we want you to. Please do us a favor. Go to our profiles, go to Lorianne's, go to Jason's, go to myself, and go ahead and start to follow us. It's really quite simple to do. You just go under the profile, you go and you see follow, you click or connect with us. We'd love to know what you're doing and how this show is impacting you and if we're giving you good value information. Also, we want you to join our community. And so in order to do that, it's real simple. You just text lunch to 316-799-8052. We notify you the next time we do go live. Lunch to 316-799-8052. We want to know more about what you want to see and what we can do to keep bringing information to you like this. I'm going to tell you guys this as just a simple goal. Donnie, you go and bring everybody back on. I'm excited about what we've been able to accomplish this year in 2022 and what we've been able to do, especially, let's give a little round of applause for Lorianne, the best co-host on the planet. But I'm not kidding you, Jason, we've got our show booked all the way out into February, and the way things are looking, we're probably going to have 2 or 3 months worth of great and incredible guests booked up. So who knows? We might end up doing this twice a week. We'll see. I don't know. Lorianne's like, whoa, wait a second. I don't know. We'll see. But listen, Jason, we are so happy you're here. A little round of applause for Jason again. There we go. All right. And I'm going to give the final words to Lorianne, and then I'll let you say goodbye or anything you have to say, Jason, and then we'll go from there.
This has been a great topic and something that I talk about a lot, in what I do, because it's about learning new skills. When I teach people how to learn and really start using public speaking skills, because it helps you in your career, whether you stay in a corporation or you decide to go out and work for yourself. So I think my biggest takeaway today is about learning a new skill so that it doesn't cost you in the long run in your career. So thank you so much, Jason. This has been such a valuable session.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad that I was able to be here because again, it's I see a lot of the stress and pressure that people have in their lives, and it doesn't have to be that way, right? And but it does take work on your part. It takes some asking some of these questions, maybe getting some help. But yeah, hopefully it's helpful for everybody because I think most people don't realize, like we said, how much it actually costs you to stay in a job where you're not growing in your personal development, but you're also not growing in your money. And at the end of the day, we all need money to live. So
Jason, where can people find you so that they
Thank you.
can
I
follow
was
you,
just-
learn
I
more
was just
about
about to
you?
say
want to
that,
follow me?
Yeah.
Well,
Where can they
know,
find you?
sometimes I take a walk in my neighborhood and you can, oh, no. I mean, it's really easy. LinkedIn, I'm all over there. I think it's Jason Mefford is my profile name. You can, follow me there, send me a DM. JasonMefford.com is my website where you can actually check out the podcasts and all the different blogs that I've done. There's also stuff there if you want coaching, some stuff that you can go to from there. But if you forget all of that stuff, just type my name into Google and I'll be 8 or 9 of the top 10. You can find me somewhere.
Except the profile picture may not look like this one.
It may not have this because that
yes.
profile picture was a year ago.
That's
All right,
not
we're gonna
bad. Not
update
bad
that.
in a year. Not bad in a year. All right, awesome. Listen, Anita, do us a favor. Drop something in the comments for everybody who is watching. Again, you guys, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it, Jason. Honestly, it was a great conversation. I love this. We'd love to have you back. We really would. Listen, stick around,
March,
Jason.
April.
Hey, there we go. We're gonna put you in the back real quick while we close up, and then stick around, and we'll talk to you here in a little bit. You guys, thank you so much. Again, we are so blessed and grateful for you guys being a part of this program. We definitely want to hear from you. Okay, it's important for us.
Let us know. And should we tell them that we have a really special program for next week?
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
We have a really special program that we are putting together for next week. We know that next week is a holiday week and Thanksgiving here in the U.S. So be on the lookout for that. Either you watch it live or watch the replay.
Yeah. So take a look for it. We've got a lot of great stuff coming up. We're going to be posting about that very soon. A lot of really, really great speakers. We're ending the year with a bang. We're starting the year with a boom. So it's a bang and a boom. Okay. I promise you don't want to miss it. We're just glad that you're here. Listen, thank you so much. Donnie, get ready to roll us out. God bless you guys. Take care of yourself, and we will see you guys next week. Same time. See ya.